In any school day, there are plenty of key moments when relationships between teachers and pupils get strained. We asked a panel of teachers to analyse 3 scenarios. They'll discuss what the teachers do and say what they think could be done to improve the relationship.
Yeah, so if I can have those projects in by the end of the week, please. Now, right, ATEF, hands up, who's read a good book recently? Oh, wow, Shikara. Surprised to see your hand up, that's nice. So what have you read recently?
I forgot.
Right, yeah, so look, who has read a book that they can remember the title of? Someone sensible. Neo. Neo, what have you read recently?
The Secret of the Falcon.
Good. The Secret of the Falcon. What kind of book is that? Is that a fantasy or...?
Adventure.
Well, that was a very uncomfortable scene, I found, did you?
I just felt that his language was quite aggressive. His attitude was aggressive and he just put her down.
What to put down to say that I'm surprised you read a book. And I think that he would need to apologise for that publicly in front of the whole class and to say, I'm sorry that I said that to you.
I mean, it strikes me that what you've got there is a very unsafe classroom, really, haven't you? Yes. If I was a pupil in that class, I wouldn't want to offer an opinion, I wouldn't want to put my hand up, I wouldn't want that teacher to notice me, because if they did, I'd be frightened that I was going to be put down.
He had low expectations of the group on the whole, and it came through.
And it certainly didn't allow for the fact that some children, when they're put on the spot, do forget, don't they?
I mean, I might say something like, well, I'll come back to you later, or I might have said, well, tell me the last thing you have read.
Yes.
He could have turned that away from her by saying, I often do that, it doesn't matter.
Apart from that one boy that he favoured, didn't he?
Yes.
He also, he in fact said, now let's choose somebody sensible.
Yes.
I mean, you wouldn't say that in a classroom.
No.
Tone of voice can be also very, very important. It's very, very easy to think you're being nice. In actual fact, you come across as being quite demeaning.
And it's also very bad modelling. If I'm sarcastic with a class, how can I then turn around and say, don't you speak to him like that?
Yeah, I mean, he totally destroyed that student because on the one hand, it's saying, oh, you know, low expectation, you've read a book, and then saying, oh, you've got your hand up, which is good, but what's she to think?
I mean, I think, you know, if we use negative language in a classroom with youngsters, what we're actually doing is we are lowering their expectations for themselves, and that negative language affects the way in which we then deal with them. So those youngsters then feel that they aren't safe anymore. They're not in a place of safety, are they? How we speak about them affects what we actually do for them.
Well, I'd be very surprised if she offered to answer a question again in that lesson.
And me. So if we come into a classroom and I give you a body language which is negative, but I say something positive, I'm actually doing even more damage, aren't I?
Yes.
Getting really mixed messages then, aren't you?
Really mixed messages, which is very dangerous.
Looking forward, perhaps, that he might need to be observed by somebody else. Look at the language he's using and the way that he's working with students and his relationships with the students in the room.
That would be a very important thing to do because he perhaps doesn't see that he's coming across in that way. Often you don't see the way you're coming across, so it might help him.
Certainly that teacher probably needs some support in the way he's managing his classes at the moment, and it may be a whole school issue whereby the senior leadership team say, we're going to come in and observe people teaching, and then we're going to perhaps see if there's some other different methods that we can use to help to bring on our students.
And I think it would be two-tier sort of support. First, that he gets observed himself, but then he might need to observe somebody else as well to see how they handle their classroom.
Yeah.
Perhaps the one thing that they should do is do a pupil questionnaire.
Very powerful tool.
That is a very powerful tool.
Very powerful tool. I think a lot of teachers, though, are frightened of using that because they don't want to see any negative feedback. If we are all learners, we have to take the good with the bad ourselves as well.
I mean, are they accessing their learning? That's what any questionnaire would be asking, isn't it? Are you able to access your learning? And therefore, I shouldn't be frightened by that, should I?
No, you shouldn't.
I shouldn't.
OK, guys, coming in. Settle down as quickly as you can, please. Oh, Claire, how was the rehearsal? Hi, Mike. How was the match? Okay, well, good to see you all. So let's get down to it. Today, in pairs, I want you to compare your homework and see if there's anything you think is missing or anything you think your partner could have done differently.
Making yours. You're right. Yeah. Sure?
Yeah.
Are you all right, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, well, why don't you have a look at that one instead, okay?
Yeah, I was wanting to know, is there anything wrong with Mike in 10C at all?
Yes, there are some problems with him at home. I'm going to bring it up in the departmental meeting this afternoon. Just don't put too much pressure on him.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much.
I thought that was quite an interesting scene, really. How do you feel that the teacher dealt with it?
I thought he handled it very well. I liked his whole attitude as the students came in. I liked the way he was obviously involved with his students and involved with how they are outside of school. And also, I think he knew something was wrong with that boy as he walked in the classroom.
I think he handled it very, very well, and in the sense that he didn't have a confrontation with the boy about his behaviour at that time and just left it.
Didn't make the situation any worse, in fact.
It could have very easily turned into quite a difficult and nasty situation. And had he gone the other way, I think he was ready to explode.
I mean, I think one of the big things for me was that he didn't take it personally. He didn't think the boy was being offensive to him. He realised it was something that had come in from outside. And so in fact, sometimes by, you know, saying, right, I'm going to ignore this and I'm going to do that. There's times, isn't there, when it's right to ignore certain behaviours. I mean, I was quite impressed by the reaction of the boy's partner when he didn't want to be partnered, and I thought he behaved in a very mature way, really, yeah, didn't he?
It would be nice to see the teacher congratulating him on the way he'd actually handled, which could have been another difficult situation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What did worry me was the fact that it hadn't been brought up earlier.
I mean, if it was in the school that I'm teaching in, I would have had an email about it from the form tutor or the head of year, or found out through briefing, or certainly if my head of department knew about it, I would have been informed before I received that student, so I could put things in place before it actually happened.
So what we're saying there really is that that's a whole school issue, isn't it? If it's not been tackled well by the school, the teacher was actually managing a very difficult situation extremely well. And in fact, by him then following up as he did, it would then be really important to see whether or not there needed to be some further input, perhaps even from a multi-agency team or from a behaviour and education support team. Who might be able to get involved in whatever the issues are for him, because they might actually not be educational at all.
And I think that is often overlooked, that teachers do need to get to know their students.
Because actually the pupils won't feel safe if somebody is so distanced from them that they don't feel they can have any relationship at all with that person.
And it can be difficult sometimes because you are teaching so many students in a day.
Yeah.
If I was the first person to see that issue, and it hadn't been picked up before, I would take it to the form tutor and say, I noticed this today. And
of course, with a lot of schools now, the form tutor would take their class right through, wouldn't they, from year 7 through to the end of year 11. So by the time they get to year 11, you know them very well, don't you?
Okay, what I wanted to do now is to look again at changing verbs in a piece of writing. So for the next 2 minutes, in pairs, I want you to change the verbs in each of the sentences. Okay? So girls, looking at the first line here, what verb would you change?
I think original is not a verb. Yes, but yeah.
Girls, looking at this sentence.
But it's not a verb. Originally is not a verb. You can't originally something.
Claire, you're doing it again. Could you stop talking, please, and get on with the work?
I am getting on with the work. We're talking about the verbs.
Just get on with the task, please.
Always picking on me like it's always me.
So it's just that she's always talking and causing distractions.
She's fine with me. Have you tried speaking to her about it?
Well, I thought she was like it with everyone.
Well, I don't know about you, but I felt that the teacher could have done with some listening skills because the student was talking about the work.
I think there are other ways of handling that situation. So, for example, if the teacher thought that the student was discussing the work, but it might have been a bit too loud, she could have said, I'm pleased you're talking about the work, but can we do it quietly, please?
I felt there'd been a lot of judgment about this pupil who was actually doing exactly what she'd been asked to do, but the teacher did make a comment, didn't she? You know, it's you again, or you're always doing this, or whatever. And I thought the girl responded very, very positively, actually. I mean, she didn't get very angry at all.
With the girl that actually she felt picked on. And one thing that struck me was perhaps also looking at the way the room is actually arranged.
Yes.
You could actually look at perhaps making it more inclusive, especially with work like that where they are actually working in pairs.
I got a sort of slight sense that she was a bit frightened. I mean, it could be to do with the fact that maybe she feels a little bit threatened by some of her students and so wants to spend her time with the earnest little workers, therefore reacting before something happened, you know, as if I don't do it now, something terrible was going to happen, and that actually was not so. It was a misreading of what was going on in the lesson, wasn't it?
But that's why teaching is so difficult, because you have to read all of these things and you can get it wrong.
It's obvious that she's got into a loop with that particular student and that it needs to be broken, and how does she break that? So I think she's done the right thing by asking how this pupil is for other colleagues.
I think we also need to encourage a culture of where teachers are not afraid of saying, I have an issue with pupil X or class X, and where we can say, yes, if you have a problem, we will support you.
The culture of the school is actually making it that it is supportive, and that just doesn't mean for students, it actually means for teachers as well.
There's certainly a need for that teacher maybe to be able to understand some of the Every Child Matters outcomes, really. How does she create a safe space in her classroom for her children, and not to be making prejudgments about youngsters coming in, because I think that as soon as we label something, we actually get emotionally involved in it, and once we're emotionally involved in it, then it becomes an issue and we can't deal with it.
It's also important that when you are dealing with students' behaviour, you address the behaviour rather than the student. So you might say, the way you are behaving is whatever, rather than saying you are.
It's using the positive language, not negative. This student is a naughty person or a naughty girl or a naughty boy, but actually their behaviour
is inappropriate.
Is inappropriate.
I always think it's quite interesting when you see teachers saying, you know, oh, you behave. I am doing, this is how I behave. How do you want me to behave? What is it you want me to do? And separating that out, I think, is really critical, because it allows for change.
It can be really difficult for me to say well done to everything, but you have to try, because students do respond to praise.
I think she needs to have a conversation with that youngster, and I would suggest that she needs to have a sort of one-to-one conversation with her so that they can perhaps talk about the way in which they feel.
Well, it's that starting every lesson with your high expectations, regardless of how badly the last lesson went.
And it's the new beginnings, it's let's begin again. Well, you know, saying, look, we had a dreadful lesson last week. I don't know how that all happened. I'm really sorry it all happened. I don't want that to happen again today. We need to move forward. Let's begin again. What do I need to do for you? What can I do for you? You tell me what you need and I'll see if I can provide that. So we're in the best learning environment, because it's all about learning, isn't it? It's about teaching and learning and being in a place where you're safe to do that. And that's what we're trying to create here, I think.